Welcome to my YouTube channel Ishwari Art, and in this video I will tell you how to paint a love lolly. So this is the process video that I have recorded for you all to show you full-time artwork process, and I am using Thoi watercolors for this artwork. I will leave the colors that I have used for this particular painting in the caption as well for your reference. I am using different shades of reds, so I'll go into the details a little after. So I started by wetting my background with clean water, and the paper I am using is Baohong 300 GSM cold pressed paper. Alright. And I am wetting the subject with the clean water using my silver black velvet brush. And before going to next step, I will discuss how important it is to use water and wet the background, specifically in watercolors. So as the name says, it is watercolors, and this technique is wet on wet technique that we'll be adopting to give a lot of textures, lot of definition, smoothness, and allowing the colors to blend it by itself. And it is one of the most used and favorite technique for most of the watercolor artists. So this wet on wet technique is a little tricky as well, but once you master it, you will definitely love this one. I am making sure that there is enough water on the paper. That is why I am applying different layers, multiple layers of water. As you can see, I am going on applying the water, and it's not like a dripping wet as well. You can see the little shine on the paper, so that is what we needed for watercolors to flow and work on the paper. Now I'm kind of satisfied with it, and then just diluting the color. So this is the scarlet color I am using, Scarlet Lak. So one of the brightest reds you can say, and I am spreading it, you can see, in a very diluted consistency here. Just a tad bit of color and then just spreading it out all over the heart first of all, and then I will be building layers on top of this. Okay, so while building layers, you can just add a little darker consistency of the colors based on the subject. So for this subject, we need to play with different values. You will understand when you go through the entire process video of this one. As I was discussing just before, we need to vary the values of colors. So I am adding darker tone wherever required to define and picking up the color as well. So this is another amazing technique that most of the watercolor artists use, and not most, but in detailed subjects, I must say. So to pick up the colors wherever required, if there are any excess colors while assessing the subject. So you just have to look back the overall composition and then put up the strokes. So that is what should go in your mind while painting. So these areas, I feel there needs to be a little darker strokes, and then I felt that there are a bit of hard edges, so I am just trying to smoothen it up and picking up a little bit of color as well. So this comes on by practice, but I am telling you the process, how it goes in the back end, or what you should think of while seeing a reference picture and wanting to paint this scene. Now for the darker tone for this one, I have used a maroonish red shade. So you can also mix a bit of darker tone with whatever red you have. Maybe a bit of mixing a bit of blue in the red will give a purplish and maroonish tinge. That also you can use if you're not having a lot of colors with you. You can go with whatever colors you have. So here I am just using different shade of the red that I have in my collection of Thovi Arts watercolors. It is a kind of maroonish red, and I am using it to give the darkest values of this lolly, which is the edges and the edges near the stick and all these elements, and few highlights on the actual composition of the lolly as well. Okay. Just adding few details that would add more meaning to the subject that we are painting. So even if this little details, if not added also, would do fine. If you think that this may be little challenging for you to attempt, you can just skip this little part where I added small circles here and there, but that gives more realistic and lively appearance to it. And I felt there is a little bit dull color, so I want to add a little bit of color on the left side and highlight the transparency towards the right. So I just blended it, and there we go. And this is the time we have to switch to the next element of the painting. So I started painting the stick part of the lolly using paint spray, so very diluted version and just a tad bit of color and just blending it in to give a lighter as well as the darker effect. So this one I am not doing wet on wet, I am going for wet on dry technique. You can see that there are a bit of bleeds here and there, but that's okay once it is dried. If it is not so evident, you can just ignore them. Just when you notice it closely with your naked eye, sometimes you can see, but that's okay at some paintings, and when you're exploring and learning few things, that's alright to have some minute bleeds here and there or harsh edges here and there. So just don't worry too much if it is happening for you as well. It is a very common aspect while painting. Okay. This part is the interesting part of the entire painting for me, because you should not miss the red tinge, as well as you have to ensure that the stick of the lolly is being seen. So there was a bleed happening, but then still I tried to manage, and I feel I need some highlights, so I'm adding those highlights as well. Because my paper is not dried completely, I am able to do that, and trying to blend, trying to experiment more and make it look better. As you can see from the sketch that we need a little bit of darker tone. So what I'm doing here is adding a tad bit of Payne's grey that is there on my palette itself to the green, and getting a mixture of the colors and applying. So this is how I repurpose the colors that are there on the palette itself, or the colors that are there in the subject itself, and build a little darker tone. And this is definitely one of the interesting part in my all the paintings. I do this mostly in all my paintings, be it my Skillshare paintings or Skillshare classes. or be it my live sessions, or in general, this is my go-to habit to build darker values using the colors that are there on the palette mostly, and embrace the sheets. So this gives a little unique feeling to the painting. Of course, your personal touch, but it is all worth it to try, right? I'm building a lot of darker tones and layers for this ribbon, and this took a little bit of time compared to the lolly, because here I'm using wet on dry and also adding some details, very minute details that define the shape and composition of the bow. So this is a little bit time consuming, but I think that's alright, because details matter. If you closely observe, here I am diluting and pulling the paint that is already there towards the bottom edge, and then defining the edge using of a diluted paint spray. So these are few elements that you can capture from these and experiment in your artworks as well. Now I am adding a little bit of highlights using white gouache. So you can also leave these areas white, but for this subject it is difficult to leave such tiny thin white areas intact. So that is why I chose this method of adding white gouache on top of the entire composition to make sure that it looks very realistic. And here we go with the final look. And of course, we have to own our paintings, right? So I am ending up with a nice signature of mine which didn't turn up good. So I just quickly dabbed it off and removed, and then just going ahead on top of it, because before my brush was loaded with water, that is why. Yay, the painting is complete, and this is how I arrange everything for the final picture. So I just put the brushes I use, the colors that I use around the artwork, and just capture the picture and post it on different social platforms. Don't forget to subscribe for new video every week.